You've heard it on YouTube over and over.
Baltic birch.
Baltic birch.
Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch. Baltic birch.
It is by far the best plywood I have ever worked with.
That's right, the 13-ply goodness, the elusive Baltic birch. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that I've never worked with it. Even when it was affordable at roughly $100 a sheet, the more common home center stuff was always more attractive at $50, and I just downgraded my standards to calling this the good stuff. But check your local lumber distributor for 5x5 sheets at a more manageable $150. And here she is. Needless to say, I'm excited about working with this, but very apprehensive in making this first cut. So I'll line up my track saw very carefully before shaving off the minimum amount of wood needed for this project. Oh, by the way, this project is a table saw sled, which I've been needing desperately because I've been making some rather precarious cuts, and this should alleviate that. Now, I've watched a lot of table saw sled videos, and I'm going to compile all the pieces into what I think makes a usable sled and not go crazy with features that I'll probably never use. First, I'm going to heed lots of advice and avoid the urge to make this thing massive, so I'm going with 24 by 18. This stuff is so pretty, I even consider saving this little piece. The front fence is going to be a single piece, but for the back I wanted something a bit more beefy, so I'm going to glue two pieces together, and I'm going to try this trick where you sprinkle some salt in the glue seam to prevent the two pieces from wandering when you get them into clamps. And we'll let that sit overnight. Before sticking the pieces together, I'll round some of these edges over. As an added safeguard for tear out, I used some blue tape on the edges. Not sure this is necessary, but everything came out pretty clean. Also do a 45-degree chamfer where the back fence meets the base as a little dust cavern. Again, taking advantage of everything being disassembled, I'll sand now, including these little pieces, but I'll let that be a surprise as to what those are for. Going back to compiling YouTube advice, I'm going to use bought runners here versus making my own out of some hardwood. These are aluminum and have an expanding washer you can fiddle with to get just the right fit in your miter slots. The advantage here is that seasonal movement is mostly eliminated from what you would get in wood, making the sled tight in the summer and loose in the winter. Once I had the fit I wanted, I put some washers in the miter slot to raise up the runners. My original thought was to avoid using glue so that I could remove them easily if needed, so I tried double-sided tape to temporarily hold them in place while I drove in screws from the back. But in going back to test fit, they must have skewed because they wouldn't go in. So I removed them and went ahead with CA glue. Looking back, this isn't that bad because I can probably pretty easily snap the aluminum from the plywood should I ever need to remove them. And that seemed to work, so we'll button up a few other things, namely gluing and pin nailing the front fence on. We can glue this on because nothing references off the front fence. Also glue and nail this box together, and I'll drill a little hole in the base of the sled over here. You'll see what that's for in a moment. Now for the back or reference fence, I'll clamp it as close to square with the back of the base as possible and countersink and screw it down from the back. Definitely don't want to glue this down as you may need to make adjustments to get it perpendicular to the blade. Now we can push the sled through and establish our cut line, but my runners hit the outfeed table. So I'll need to carve out a space for those runners to go with a router. This blue tape seemed to help with tear out of the Formica surface. And hell, why not throw some finish onto that exposed MDF? Now I can finally take that cut line through the back fence. To tune that back fence, I'll draw an X on a scrap piece and make a cut through that X and slide the pieces over and flip one end for end. If the gap between the pieces is closest to the fence, you need to rotate your back fence clockwise. And if it's closest to the saw, rotate it counterclockwise. Sometimes luck is on your side though.
Wow.
I'll glue and tack that box onto the back where the blade comes out for further dummy proofing, and I'll follow up my previous sanding efforts, knocking down those parts where a rounded edge meets a square one, and give this whole thing a few coats of wipe-on poly. I'll trim this T-track to length and affix it to the left side of the back fence and install this flip stop for repeatable cuts. And then I'll use my finger hole to put this project to bed in its nice carpeted cubby. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.